What's up, everybody? Matt Maran here for another weekly update. So there's lots of news to go over once again, so let's get right into it. Lots of cars getting discontinued and stuff here, it sounds like. But first, we'll get to some exciting hypercar news, and that is that Autocar is reporting that McLaren is working on a new hypercar they're calling the P15 that'll be faster than the P1, of course. And we've heard other reports, and I think McLaren's actually officially confirmed this code name. But the new details are what Autocar is estimating about this thing. They said it's a pretty good chance it will be hybrid, although there's a chance it could be non-hybrid as well. But considering how everything's going to hybrid these days, and the P1 was hybrid, I'm guessing it will be a hybrid. But anyway, Autocar is estimating the weight of this thing at around 2,900 pounds is what they've heard. And they also say that the twin-turbo 3.8-liter V8 engine that they always use at McLaren is going to have 789 horsepower is what they heard, or what their estimate is. And so that's before, I guess, adding on any additional, electrical power or whatever. But anyway, that's kind of what they're saying. Now, this is different than the McLaren F1 successor, which is another super high-end vehicle that McLaren is working on. It's going to be the three-seater one, 3 across. And that's, I think they're only making like 106 of those or something, and that's it. So very much more limited, I think, than this P15. But very exciting stuff going on at McLaren, so cool to see that. There's some exciting stuff going on at Ford still as well, although it's about the GT500, which hopefully we'll see sometime before the end of this decade. I don't know what's going on with that. It seems like it's been taking forever. So it's been spied yet again, and once again, it's got a big hood bulge there. This one doesn't have a spoiler. Very aggressive, meaty tire setup and all that, but we can't tell anything else about it other than the fact that it looks like it's still running the old front end, which has some outlets, I think, Autoblog is saying that this is just a GT350 that's being revised a little bit, but maybe there is a revised GT350 coming as well, although that's kind of up in the air. But this is almost certainly the GT500, just based off how bulky that hood looks, unless they're really trying to throw people off with extra padding under the camo or something. Pretty sure this is a GT500. The interesting thing about this, though, is these spy shots were taken when the car is being benchmarked against a Porsche 911 GT3. So that should kind of give you an idea of what they're gunning for. Now, these were spied running around CL1s as well, so I'm sure they're wanting to also compete with the Camaro still. But it looks like they got their sights set higher than just beating the Camaro. It's, let's try and beat Porsche, or at least be right up there with them. And so very interesting to see that, and we'll have to wait and see, how that actually pans out whenever they finally do release this thing. Some other odd Ford news here this past week, it's kind of been, at least it was a shock to me, was there's a new report saying that the Ford Fiesta, the next generation version, which is a 2018 model here that was supposed to be coming sometime early next year or whatever, probably won't come to the United States. So this is Car Scoops reporting this story from a Romanian car magazine called 0 to 100. They were interviewing the Fiesta program manager, Robert Stiller, and he is quoted as saying, "The previous model was a global Ford product, and with the new generation, we are targeting only Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Those are the only 3 places where this new Fiesta is showing up, apparently." He says, "In North America, especially in the United States, China, and Latin America, the demand for such cars is declining, and we are reacting accordingly." So not surprising, everyone wants enormous SUVs, gas is cheap, so, the subcompact car is very unpopular these days. But it's really a shame, especially for the Fiesta ST, which I'm assuming we also won't get. Now, whenever the new 2018 Fiesta ST was announced, I was annoyed by it because they said they were downsizing yet again to a 3-cylinder turbo engine that would have the same power as the outgoing 4-cylinder one, and I was kind of annoyed at that, but it's still, I was still happy they were making the car, because the Fiesta is a great platform. The current Fiesta ST I actually prefer over the Focus ST, honestly, and it's a ton of fun, and especially for the money, it's a really tough value to beat. And so I'm really sad that it only got 1 generation here in the States before being taken away from us here. Now, this isn't 100% confirmed by Ford, at least Ford North America, so there's a little sliver of hope that it'll come here, but I would certainly not hold your breath for this thing, sadly. But yeah, so I think we'll hopefully have some kind of announcement before the the end of the year as far as the fate of the Fiesta. But anyway, interesting to see that. Other Ford models that were discussed as possibly being on the chopping block during a recent Ford earnings meeting. They were talking about how, because of the changing market, once again, they're considering killing off the Taurus and C-Max. This is according to the Detroit News, who claims to have an inside source that's saying this. The Taurus, again, very few people buy brand new Tauruses. The Fusion is most of the same car for the much cheaper money. And so, the Taurus is kind of in a weird spot because it really is only made, I think, these days for police cruisers and stuff. State troopers in Pennsylvania here especially, that's all they use. And it's good for that type of stuff. But otherwise, and there's the new Fusion, I think, police vehicle that they have now. So they're, I think, going to probably try and phase the cops and stuff into Fusions, I'm guessing, because it sounds like the Taurus isn't selling well enough on its own to justify keeping it around. The other vehicle, the C-Max, they're considering killing off as well. That's another vehicle that, nobody bought. I can't believe it's still currently being produced, honestly, because it's so unpopular. But yeah, so not a huge surprise there, but again, just lots of cars on the chopping block, and it doesn't end there. General Motors this past week, a story came out. According to Reuters, they were reporting that they had an inside source that originally claimed that there are 6 cars on the chopping block at GM. In particular, there's one plant there in Detroit that produces a lot of these duds, as far as just vehicles that don't sell well. They're good cars, but they just don't sell well. And so they're probably just thinking about moving that plant, or killing off that plant or something, but they're trying to save those jobs. So it's kind of a mixed report, because one of the cars they claimed was going to get killed off, supposedly, or it was possible, was the Cadillac CT6. And whenever that report came out, the Cadillac CEO quickly came out and was like, no, we just came out with the CT6, we're working on a refresh of the CT6, we're not going to kill off the CT6, there's no plans to do that whatsoever. It's a brand new platform and everything. So the CT6 is thankfully safe, which is really good news, because I adore the CT6. I think it's one of the best luxury cars out there. So glad to hear that one is safe at least, but the other ones, it's not so certain. So they're saying that these vehicles wouldn't get killed until after 2020, or very shortly after 2020. But the vehicles that they're considering supposedly killing off are the Buick LaCrosse, Cadillac XTS, Chevy Impala, which would be a sad one because that car has been in production for a long time. Chevy Sonic, which makes sense. That's the Fiesta competitor. So if the Fiesta is dying off, most likely the Sonic will too. And then the Chevy Volt, which would be killed off because that's not doing very well sales wise. And they have plans to supposedly replace it with a hybrid crossover, a Volt or of some sort by around 2022. So lots of changes there, especially the Impala. Sad to see that nameplate go, but it's just, again, a car that is just sat stagnant. The Malibu is just as big now. It's like, what's the point? So I can certainly see that car dying off as well. But anyway, crazy to hear all that kind of stuff, and hopefully those jobs do end up getting saved or moved around so that there isn't too much people that are out of jobs because of this. Another vehicle that was killed off was the Infiniti QX70, which is the coupe one that uses the 370Z V6 motor. It was a really cool little thing back in the day when it was called the FX. Those are really awesome, and I actually would still like to review one of those eventually. But they're cool vehicles, but as it grew on, it just kind of eventually kind of fizzled out, and people weren't too interested in it anymore. So there will be a new version of this coming sometime around 2021 to 2022, Autoblog's guessing. But it'd be based on the Nissan Murano at that point, so probably not as sporty as this current version is. But yeah, so another vehicle that, the QX60 is larger, cheaper, and sells much better. So why are they bothering with a car that, doesn't make them money? It just makes sense. So anyway, sad to hear that. But yeah, so that's all the potential casualties here in the past week that have been announced. It's just, with the crossover craze, it's just turning into a bloodbath in the sedan and small car market. It's just crazy. Back to Chevy, though. Speaking of those crossovers, they announced pricing for the 2018 Traverse this past week. And it's, the all-new one now, because the old one was on the road for, I think, like 9 years before they finally discontinued it. So it's a lot of car for the money. It's huge. I think this is like 10 inches longer than a Ford Explorer. It's massive. But it's only starting at $30,875. It can seat 8 people if you want. They say it's so long that third row is actually really roomy and usable, so that it's like actually positioned after I guess, the axle there in the rear. So there's lots of legroom there for third row passengers and whatnot. And fully loaded, they'll get up to 55 grand for the high country version, but that's right in line with, you know, the Ford Explorer Platinum and all that kind of stuff. Like I said, it's roomier and bigger than the Explorer, the Pilot, the Highlander. So a very compelling package. So cool to hear the pricing on that. And now, if you thought all the car deaths were kind of grim, here's some more grim news for those of us that love gasoline engines. This past week, now, you know, a few weeks ago, France announced that by 2040 they want to ban new car sales of gasoline and diesel powered vehicles, and only electric vehicles would be allowed to be sold new from 2040 on, which is still 23 years away, but you know, the end is coming, is what that signal was sent by France. So anyway, Britain this past week has announced the same thing. They want to ban new car sales by 2040 as well. And so there's some reports say that hybrids will still be okay. Other reports say no, like even hybrids are going to be illegal in 2040 to sell. So not sure, you know, which way that'll go. But even still, it's just, again, 23 years until that stuff is going to be banned, which means especially all the British manufacturers, Aston Martin, all those guys, Aston Martin, Jaguar, all those, I'm guessing they could build something for other markets like the United States and continue on with gas engines for us only if it makes sense financially. But you know, for their home market to not be able to offer this kind of stuff, it means they may very well be getting rid of that kind of stuff. And like Aston Martin, they committed to saying that they will do a manual transmission as long as it's possible to offer it. They want to be the last manufacturer to offer a manual, but how are you going to have a manual if everything has to be forced electric in 23 years? So even this could be an end there for the manuals. Like I said, maybe for other markets, they will continue to build stuff and they just won't be able to sell them in their own home market. But really crazy stuff. I mean, it's going to be a really different world here in a couple of decades, guys. It's going to be nuts. And according to the London mayor, that's not even enough. He wants to get this stuff worked in even quicker because he says electric vehicles are progressing faster than that, which is true. They are progressing faster, but he wants to have a scrapping program for diesel cars to get them off the road completely and just they're just throwing everything out of the window. So it's pretty crazy, but it is what it is. In perfect timing, basically, Mini this past week announced plans for a fully electric version of the 3-door Mini hatchback, the Cooper, which is a 2-door, I guess, depending on how you want to phrase it, 2-door, 3-door, whatever. But anyway, the fully electric Mini is going to be going into production in 2019. And so, they're still going to have, now I think they're talking about the European version. We may get it also here in the States, but they said they'd still have a diesel and a gasoline Mini versions for, over in Britain as well. But they're going to have a fully electric Mini in 2019 is when they're going to start production of that. So not too far off here. So pretty wild to hear that as well. And, we've heard that BMW wants to electrify every model line that they have. And they've already done some, but they're just going to continue to do more and more of that. And whenever you see announcements like this, it's like, all right, guys, let's ramp it up because that's the way the government's going with all this stuff. And, for the entire world, that's the way they're going. So, all the manufacturers are adapting. Another company that's adapting, and Toyota, they're very clever. They introduced the Prius back whenever it was still pretty unpopular of an idea, and they were the pioneers, really, of hybrid vehicles as we know it. And it sounds like they might be on the next breakthrough thing here. They're not the only person working on this tech, but anyway, Reuters is reporting that Toyota's working on a new fully electric car that's going to be ready by 2022, and it's going to be using solid-state batteries instead of, the normal lithium-ion batteries. And so they say these solid-state batteries can be fully recharged in just a few minutes and also offer longer range than your typical batteries do. So if it can be recharged as fast as a car can be refueled and have similar range, there goes gasoline's advantage as far as range goes and road tripping and things like that, which is, again, pretty crazy. So, again, 2022 still 5 years away. A lot of things can change in 5 years. But that's, again, very, very crazy to hear all that kind of stuff. But that's another thing. Now, the last electric story, and then I promise I'm done on electric cars for this week. Tesla has announced a few new changes here. Once again, it seems like every week they're changing around their what they're offering here for the Model S and Model X. So the new changes for the Model S and Model X, now they have discontinued the genuine leather. So there used to be an upgraded option for genuine leather in the Teslas, and that is no longer an option. It's all synthetic. leather type materials that they have, and that is it. So they're saying that all their seating surfaces are vegan friendly now, so they're all vegan, good to go for those that don't want to sit in cowhide. And so the funny thing is, though, you have to be a half-hearted vegan because it still has a leather steering wheel. So if you have an opposition to that, Elon Musk, I think, said that they can accommodate people that want synthetic steering wheel wrappings as well. So good to give people options, though. Whatever people want to buy, more power to them. But just find that interesting, though. There's no leather going to be available here in Teslas anymore. And so there's a few other things as well. For example, they haven't officially dropped yet, but by the end of the year, they're planning to drop the Model S and Model X75, or the Model S 75 rear-wheel drive version. And they're going to be only all-wheel drive for all Model S's going forward. And that, like I said, they said that's going to change around the end of this year. So that means there's going to be more of a price gap between the Model 3 and the Model S. So now the base Model S, I believe, will be about 75 grand instead of about 70 like it used to be. And so that's interesting. I guess they just want to continue to space out the two customers between those who want the Model 3 and those who want the Model S. But very interesting. So, if you want a rear-wheel drive Tesla, the only way to get it now is with the new Model 3. All right, so now back to the good old gas-burning British cars. A bunch of new British cars came out this past week. The first is the 2018 Rolls-Royce Phantom 8, which is the all-new Phantom, although it doesn't look a whole lot different. It does seem to have taken it up a notch, and made it a lot more modern with the new LED lighting treatments you see there. And it's a little more imposing. So they said that the grille is taller and wider than before. The whole front is actually taller as well. And you can see it kind of slowly slopes from the front all the way back towards the rear in one graceful motion there. And they say that the designers wanted to evoke the image of a yacht floating or sailing into port there. And so, just a very grand, aquatic naval kind of presence is what they're going for here with the new Phantom. And I think they've accomplished that. I mean, talk about presence. That thing has got it. So it's a few inches shorter, actually, surprisingly, although there's still going to be a long wheelbase version and whatnot, but it's mostly up front there. They shortened it a little bit because there was a lot of empty space there on the old Phantoms that they could shorten to make it more efficient, and so they did that. And even despite that, they were actually able to switch over to turbo. So now it's a 6.75 liter V12. They always never round up. It's always 6.75. Bentley does the same thing, but it's now twin turbocharged. So it went from 453 horsepower with that old V12 to 563 horsepower. So an extra 110 horsepower thanks to those turbos. And the pound-feet of torque has gone from 531 for the old car to 664. So again, very, very healthy upgrades there. 0 to 60, they say, is 5.3 seconds. Now, they didn't disclose a curb weight that I could see, but if a car has 664 pound-feet of torque and it can only get from 0 to 60 in 5.3 seconds, that is a boat. And it looks like one, and now it weighs as much as one as well. So that is probably one heavy sucker. But anyway, they say despite the heavy weight and the more powerful engine, thanks to those turbos, it's 10% more fuel efficient than before. So they're actually able to downsize the fuel tank slightly and still have the same effective range as before as well, which is pretty cool to see. And then as far as the interior on these things, they are always exquisite. I was able to review a Rolls-Royce Wraith last year, and that was an unforgettable experience. And I've sat in the back of a Phantom once for a very brief ride, with mink carpets and all that kind of stuff. And it's the same old world craftsmanship here for the new Phantom. They said that, their customers don't want a rolling high-tech office on wheels. They want something that's calm and relaxing and traditional. And so there isn't, a million screens and fancy stuff. It's just nice, very, very nice, comfortable seats. You got that Starlight headliner there as well, and things like that you can always option in. And some other interesting things here. They did go a little high-tech for the driver's zone. So, they've had, even in the past Phantom, the same iDrive system since they're owned by BMW. It's the same controller for the most part, just a little bit fancier looking, and that's about it. Same center screen there that, be familiar to any BMW owner. But then they also have now got digital gauges, which is kind of a shock because, Rolls-Royce, everyone likes timepieces that are traditional, and there's even an analog clock in the middle of the dashboard there like there always is. So for them to ditch analog gauges is a really surprising thing, honestly, and I don't know if their customers are going to like that very much. But it allows you to have more information there displayed, and they are very cool digital gauges you see, and that's another effort to try and modernize it. But a very interesting choice there for that. A very other interesting thing is there's a new feature called the gallery, which is what you can see on the right hand side there where the passenger sits, where you can swap out and do custom plates there and have custom artwork. So you can have, like, they had samples of gold that was like a gold printed thing of your DNA sequence and all these other things. And you can, it's not, I don't think Rolls-Royce actually does it, but you commission your favorite artist or whatever to make a piece that's significant to you and put it there and have this artwork. So a very interesting thing there. But yeah, so you can do any kind of artwork you want there. Very fancy and cool. But yes, that is the 2018 Rolls-Royce Phantom that you'll see rolling up to clubs and dignitaries in the near future. So anyway, cool to see that. Some more exciting stuff here is Jaguar has just revealed the 2018 XJR575, and that is not a license plate number, that is a car model. So it's one word for some reason, but it's the XJR that basically has the slightly more powerful engine from the F-Type SVR. Imagine that. It's just, I mean, I think the Jag XJR before had the 550 horsepower motor from the R, and now it's just, an extra 25 horsepower and new badges, and that's essentially it. You can get this special matte gray paint too if you want. Otherwise, it's available with all the same options as all the other Jags, so nothing crazy there or anything. But anyway, it looks cool, and yeah, great to see them continuing on with that. Lotus this week is another car company that is still existing, and they just came out with the Evora GT430. Which they say is the most powerful car they've ever made, which is very impressive, except they just said that when they did the Evora 410, and this just has 20 more horsepower. It's lighter as well. I'm not trying to knock it. It's 81 pounds lighter, actually, over the 410, so it's now only got a curb weight of 2,858 pounds. In a car with 430 horsepower is going to be quite a wild ride. I mean, that's basically the same weight as a BRZ, and you have 430 horsepower. Sounds like a fun combo. And so 0 to 60, 3.7 seconds. Manual only for this one. The 410 Evora, which is still available, you can get in an automatic, but this one's a manual only. They're only building 60 of these though, and who knows if they're coming to the States. But if they do, at the current exchange rates, they're 125 grand. Which is a lot of money for a car with 430 horsepower and 3.7 seconds 0 to 60. So, but very cool, and I'm glad to see Lotus is still putting out stuff and still trying, so that's good. Another vehicle that it's very, very limited is the Aston Martin Vanquish Zagato. Now, the Zagato in coupe form we've already seen. They made, I think, 99 of them or whatever, and very beautiful cars, very cool take, an Italian design based on the Aston Martin Vanquish there, of course. And so now there's a new Volante version that was spied. Convertible, of course, and it's basically the same car, just with the convertible roof from the Volante Vanquish. And they're only building 99 of these, supposedly, and most of them are almost certainly spoken for, probably by the same people that bought the coupe and want a matching set. And so that's the way it goes. And yeah, who knows the price on that, but I think the other Zagatos were like 400 grand or something. I'm not totally sure, but not cheap. And again, if you have to ask, you probably can't afford it anyway, so it's whatever. But it does look cool, I gotta say, though, with the gold accents, and it was running around racetrack here, looking very cool. It's a beautiful looking thing in Volante form, though, I gotta say, especially. So very cool to see that they're making that. Some other spy shots here this past week. Jeep was spied testing, well, not testing, they were working on a 2018 Wrangler, and so you can see it with the hood up now. And with that hood up, you can see that it's going to have the old hinges, old school style hinges, so that it can flip all the way up and still have the same clamps to clamp it down like all the other Wranglers have had ever since World War II, essentially. And so good to see they're still sticking with that with the external hinges there. Most likely the doors will do the same. And we have some other additional info on the Wrangler that got leaked out thanks to the JL Wrangler forums that has an anonymous source that apparently overheard from a dealer meeting that was going on, that the car is going to be revealed at the LA Auto Show in November, end of November, early December, which makes complete sense as far as a timing standpoint and very believable. And they say it'll actually hit dealers shortly thereafter. In December of this year is when you'll be able to get the new Wrangler, according to this report. And they say it's going to be available at launch with the 3.6 liter V6 engine with either a manual or the automatic, or there's going to be a new 2 liter 4-cylinder turbo motor with an automatic only. So those will be the two options at launch. They say there's going to be a diesel that'll be arriving about a year later. That's assuming the diesel is still a viable thing a year from now. We'll have to wait and see. But they have plans to do a diesel, and so anyway, cool to see that. A couple other cars that were spied here this past week. Burt Shackelford actually sent in some pictures of what looks like the new Infiniti, either QX, probably the new QX60, the restyled version or whatever, was spied running around there. At least that's what it certainly looks like. It's a huge thanks to him for sending in those pictures of that. We know that's going to be coming relatively soon, probably the LA Auto Show is my guess as well for the production version of that. But thanks to him for sending those in. And then we also have from Carlos some shots here of just 4 shots of this camouflage car that looks kind of like a Hyundai Equus, which is now the Genesis G90, I suppose, but it looks smaller, shorter. So I'm guessing maybe this could be the Genesis G70 that we haven't heard anything about in ages, but is still supposedly coming. And yeah, I'm not sure what that is, though. It could be something other than a Genesis product. Could be from another manufacturer entirely. You can let me know in the comments below what your best guess is on that, but huge thanks to him for sending those in. And the last story this week is an interesting thing that's kind of a Mercedes project and kind of just like a side thing that an engineer did there. So what it is the Mercedes E-Class All-Terrain 4x4 Squared. It's from, I think, the same creators as the 6x6 G-Wagon and the 4x4 Squared G-Wagon that, you know, have been very, very popular. And so engineer Jürgen Eberle was the one that kind of spearheaded this whole thing and put those same portal axles that is what gives the G-Wagons the lifted up appearance. They're on those special versions. He added those to the E-Class All-Terrain. And so what this does is it gives you that same jacked up, wider appearance. And the tricky thing, though, was this car has a fully independent suspension, unlike the G-Wagon, which still has an archaic suspension setup that makes it easier to add this stuff. So they're able to get it to work here, though, with the E-Class wagon here. And so it's pretty impressive. They said they had another one of their people from the prototyping department that 3D printed some wider fenders to cover those wheels there for this, you know, more aggressive stance. And it's pretty cool here. They said they even had Mercedes-AMG delivered them a special drive shaft that worked specifically with this vehicle. It's got 420 millimeters of ground clearance, which is over twice as much as a standard E-Class wagon there, and it'll go through 500 millimeter deep water, which is only 100 millimeters less than a G-Wagon, you know, 4x4 Squared. So very capable still. Not quite as capable as the G-Wagons, but for a lifted up wagon, I mean, it does a really good job, but I think it looks really cool as well. I don't know. It's kind of wild and out there, but also just really cool as well. And there's all kinds of other technical details of what went into making this vehicle, but the width is increased by 20 millimeters overall, so pretty impressive. It's running the same engine as a standard E400 wagon, which is the 3-liter twin turbo V6 with 333 horsepower. But yeah, they said unfortunately this is just an engineering experiment, and they have no plans to actually build these things. But I'm sure with enough money they can be convinced, because I'm assuming they didn't think that the other 6x6 G-Wagons and stuff were going to be as huge of a hit as they were. And so I could see this thing actually entering in production, even if it's in a very small amount. But anyway, very interesting to see that. But that's it for all the news this week, guys. Let me know what you think about everything in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.